President Cyril Ramaphosa has confirmed that the United States has reconsidered its stance on boycotting the G20 Leaders Summit at Nasrec in Johannesburg this weekend. Speaking at the Trilateral Leaders Meeting between South Africa and the European Union at the Sandton Convention Centre earlier tonight, Ramaphosa revealed that Pretoria is talking to Washington to find common ground on the matter. This follows US President Donald Trump's earlier remarks that he would not attend the summit, citing concerns over South Africa's land reform policy, which he describes as discriminatory against white Afrikaners. He also continued with claims of genocide against Afrikaners, Ramaphosa stressing that South Africa remains committed to constructive engagement and ensuring the summit proceeds with its core agenda of global cooperation and economic recovery.
We have received notice from the United States, a notice which we are still in discussions with them over, about a change of mind about participating in one shape, form or other in the summit. So the discussions are still ongoing. This comes really at the late hour before the summit begins. And so therefore we do need to engage in those types of discussions to see how practical it is and what it finally really means. In a way, we see this as a positive sign, very positive, because, as I've often said, boycott politics never work. It's always best to be inside the tent than being outside of the tent.
All right, for the latest now, SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joins us. And Sherwin, the White House releasing a short statement?
Well, not officially from the White House. We can confirm a U.S. government spokesperson, Bongiwe, saying the following on the SABC's breaking news that the United States will, in fact, participate in the G20 Summit. Remember, they were going to boycott this summit. President Ramaphosa was at pains to make the point that he didn't want to hand over the gavel of the G20 presidency to an empty chair. What we now understand from this U.S. government spokesperson is that there will not be an empty chair at the end of deliberations, but they will not per se be engaged in the discussion leading to that handover. Let me read you what the U.S. government spokesperson said. Quote, the charge d'affaires in Pretoria, essentially the person in charge of the embassy in Pretoria, will attend the handover ceremony as a formality, but the United States is not joining G20 discussions. So it seems that the U.S. posture here is that they will not be engaged in an outcome document, for example. They will not be engaged in the deliberations around the round table with some 20-plus member states of the G20, in addition to the 20-plus invited guests, but they will receive the handover at the end of deliberations. So once the tent is being broken down, the USA will show up to say we are now in charge. But what I think you're hearing from President Ramaphosa is a sentiment that we've made a little breakthrough here, right? It's been pretty ice cold with the United States up until this point. And now they've suddenly indicated that there won't be an empty chair. And I think what the president is expressing in those remarks is some optimism that perhaps there's now a window of opportunity here to perhaps engage with the United States a little bit more. That would be the South African perspective. But the US perspective is quite clear right now. They say they are not engaging in deliberations. They will only be there for the handover, to receive the handover from South Africa, and then, of course, assume the presidency of the G20 on December 1st. Let's also refer you to a White House deputy spokesperson, Anna Kelly, tweeting in response to SABC's breaking news about the USA not perhaps adhering to this initial boycott. They say that is fake news. They've now since clarified we'll be there at the handover, but we're not engaging in discussions.
And Sherwin, it sounds like you're saying, a bit more ceremonial than anything else. And it also then begs the question, especially when it comes to, the big concern to say how much of what is spoken about now and agreed upon now, the US then takes forward next year because it is the incoming president.
Well, the United States has made its position quite clear as it regards the agenda of the G20 under the South African presidency. They've talked about the expansive nature of the agenda. They want the G20 to return to its original mandate, which is market stability, geopolitical market stability, and macroeconomic stability. And so it's going to be hard to see if they are now going to at all engage in the discussions. Their position has been quite clear. And so this troika, right, the outgoing presidency, the current presidency, and the incoming presidency, which will be the United Kingdom, how they now guide the ship post the G20 summit at Nasrec is going to be very, very interesting to see. The United States says it wants to whittle things down. They want to refocus the energy away from what they call divisive policies like gender equity, and has asserted the fact that it no longer endorses the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think, let's make no bones about it, the United States is probably not going to take this agenda forward, maybe bits here, bits there. But broadly speaking, the South Africans have indicated that the United Kingdom has already indicated that they will be engaging on South Africa's outcomes and will take that forward once their presidency assumes the mantle post the United States.
And I suppose, Sherwin, it also speaks to just how the wording of the declaration in and itself can also be contentious, right, as far as some of the countries are concerned. So it's not only just about the two countries. Now you're adding the UK, as now they're going to be looking at this as well. But the wording at times does become an area where they don't agree.
I think what's also clear, Bongiwe, in this broad discussion is that the United States is a minority in this discussion. It is a minority. Its views are the minority, perhaps backed a little bit by Saudi Arabia, and maybe elements here and there from certain countries. But broadly, South Africa has received the affirmation and backing by the majority of G20 states. And so what you might see in an outcome document is an appendix, an addendum that says perhaps the United States is not endorsing as all the other member states of the G20 are. But that is not unique. This has happened in the past. Sometimes G7 communiques are not adopted because one party, for example, the United States, does not concur with those prescriptions that were decided by the collective. And so very much a minority view. Yes, the biggest economy in the world. Yes, the largest military, very much a power that can, bilaterally and unilaterally decide things that can affect, the global sway. But broadly, the United States, if we are to be honest, is the minority in this discussion. And the posture we've heard from South Africa most recently is that the world needs to find out how to move forward with or without the United States. The posture has been a little bit more robust from President Ramaphosa, again saying that countries should sit around the table where sovereignty is sacrosanct, and that no one is bullying. And so we're seeing this sort of bold posture from South Africa in the closing stages of its presidency, and the United States saying that it will, at the very least, receive the gavel from President Ramaphosa come Sunday.
And of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa, they're saying, Sherwin, that they will not be bullied. South Africa will not be bullied, and really talking tough there. Thank you so much, Sherwin. Appreciate it.